My brothers and sisters of the African soil, I stand before you not merely as a voice, but as a mirror to your conscience. I do not come with polished speeches crafted for applause, but with truth forged in the fires of our suffering and our hope. Africa, our beloved continent, has cried for too long. Her gold has been taken, her children have been scattered, her dignity has been violated, and yet she still stands. But today I do not rise to mourn. I rise to salute because in the ashes of despair a young lion has risen. In the silence of betrayal a voice of thunder has spoken. In a world where many African leaders are content to kneel before foreign powers, there comes a soldier, not dressed in designer suits, but clothed in the armor of courage, of sacrifice, of conviction. His name is Ibrahim Traore. He did not wait for age to find him worthy. He did not bow to the so-called diplomatic order. He did not negotiate with the chains that held his people. Instead, he stood. A captain, yes, but also a compass. A revolutionary, yes, but also a reminder that Africa does not lack heroes. It only lacks those who dare to act when it matters most. He has reminded the youth of Africa that power is not in Paris. It is not in Washington. It is not in handouts and loans. Power is in the hands of a people who believe in their own worth. Traore has given a face to our frustrations and, more importantly, a direction to our dreams. When Africa finds herself at the crossroads of hope and despair, it is not experience alone that will deliver her. It is courage, it is clarity, it is the unshakable belief that this continent, bruised and battered as she may be, can rise again. And that belief today is not whispered in secret. It is being shouted boldly by a new generation that refuses to inherit the chains of their fathers. This is not just a passing moment. It is a historic awakening. Africa is witnessing the rise of young, brave, and conscious leadership. The kind that does not wait to be told it is time, but knows that time itself is a thief when you hesitate. Across this continent, something remarkable is happening. Young leaders are no longer just dreaming, they are doing. They are no longer watching from the sidelines, they are stepping into the arena. They are no longer asking for permission to lead, they are answering the cry of their people. They are no longer defined by titles, but by action, authenticity, and African identity. They understand that leadership is not a chair to sit in, but a burden to carry. That power is not for privilege, but for purpose. And when you look into the eyes of this rising leadership, you do not see fear, you see fire. You do not hear the language of dependency, you hear the rhythm of defiance. This is a generation that understands that Africa's battle is not just with foreign powers. It is also with the cowardice within. They are not here to manage colonial leftovers. They are here to build new foundations. They are not here to beg for justice. They are here to create it. We have for too long measured leadership by age and by political connections. But today, a different standard is emerging. We are seeing soldier, leaders, scholar activists, digital warriors, and fearless organizers who are uniting under one vision, a free, proud, and prosperous Africa, and they are not blinded by greed, they are guided by history. They are not tied to foreign bank accounts, they are rooted in the soil of their people. These are not the leaders we were told to expect. These are the leaders Africa has been waiting for. They are young, yes. But youth is no sin when it is matched with wisdom. In fact, youth is the blessing that this continent has been given in abundance. Over 60% of Africa's population is under the age of 25. That is not a statistic. That is a sleeping army of thinkers, builders, fighters, and visionaries. And today, that army is waking up. It is not marching with guns. It is marching with ideas, with integrity, with innovation, and it is refusing to be silenced. This new generation is not perfect, but they are powerful. not because they have all the answers, but because they are finally asking the right questions. Why should Africa, so rich in resources, be poor in dignity? Why should Africa, home to the first civilization, be treated as the last in line? Why should our leaders wear tailored suits in foreign capitals while our children sleep hungry in mud huts? Why should we export gold, diamonds, and uranium only to import poverty, confusion, and shame? These questions are no longer rhetorical, they are revolutionary. It is this kind of fearless inquiry, this refusal to accept the unacceptable, that marks the new African leadership, a leadership that knows that sovereignty is not symbolic. It is real, it is economic, it is political, and most importantly, it is mental. We can no longer celebrate independence when our minds are still colonized. We can no longer boast of flags and anthems while our policies are written in foreign tongues. Real leadership is about breaking the cycle, not managing it. And yes, the road ahead is not easy. There will be resistance. There will be sabotage. There will be those who say we are too young, too radical, too impatient. But let it be known, Africa's salvation will not come from caution. It will come from conviction, and this generation has it. Not the kind that seeks applause, but the kind that sacrifices. Not the kind that negotiates freedom, but the kind that demands it. Not the kind that imitates the West, but the kind that restores the African soul. Let us not miss this moment, for history is watching, the ancestors are watching, the unborn are watching, and this generation must choose either to be remembered as the inheritors of chains or the authors of change. There comes a time in the life of a people when silence is no longer golden. There comes a time when the chains that once sat lightly on the body begin to weigh heavily on the soul. That time for Africa is now. For too long the continent has survived under the deceptive comfort of flags of independence while still living under the heavy hand of neo-colonial control. For too long our leaders have been told who to trade with, what policies to adopt, what debts to carry, and what futures to forfeit, all in the name of partnership. But today we must unmask this truth. What is called partnership is often nothing more than polite domination. Neocolonialism is more dangerous than colonialism because it wears the face of friendship while tightening the noose of dependence. It arrives in business suits instead of military uniforms. It comes bearing aid with one hand and contracts with the other. It smiles at our leaders in global forums only to sabotage their efforts behind closed doors. It promises development but delivers dependency. And while the chains are no longer visible, the shackles on our economies, our currencies, our institutions, and our sovereignty are stronger than ever before. Our minerals are dug by foreign hands. Our policies are approved by foreign think tanks. Our budgets are balanced based on foreign loans, and our destiny for decades has been auctioned off at the altar of external approval. But let us ask, how long shall Africa be a continent of wealth for others and poverty for herself? How long shall we remain producers of raw material and consumers of finished lies? How long shall we allow our skies to be watched by foreign drones and our decisions shaped by foreign interests? This is not a call for isolation. It is a call for liberation. Africa does not fear the world, but Africa will no longer be owned by it. True friendship between nations is based on equality, not exploitation. It is based on mutual respect, not manipulation. If a partner insists that your military, your economy, your elections, and your institutions must serve their strategic interest, then you are not a partner, you are a puppet, and Africa will no longer be anyone's puppet. The youth of Africa are now reading, they are listening, they are organizing, they are questioning the economic treaties signed without consultation. the military bases built without explanation, and the debts accumulated without justification. They are asking why our resources bring riches to Europe, but not to our villages, why our gold fills vaults in Paris while our mothers walk miles for water, why our uranium lights up foreign cities while our children sit in darkness. And these are not just angry questions, they are righteous demands. The chains of neocolonialism will not break themselves. They will not melt under the heat of speeches. They must be challenged by vision, broken by courage, and buried by a united Africa. And this battle will not be won in conferences alone. It must be fought on the battlefield of conscious policy, making, local empowerment, and strategic defiance. We must take control of our agriculture, our banking systems, our energy, our defense, and above all our narratives. For the greatest victory of neocolonialism has not just been in stealing our resources. It has been in convincing us that we cannot govern without foreign direction. But I stand here today to declare that this myth must die. Africa is not a child to be supervised. Africa is not a project to be funded. Africa is not a problem to be fixed. Africa is a continent of civilizations, of genius, of resilience, of power. We do not need foreign approval to dream, to plan, or to rise. We need only the boldness to believe that we are enough, that we can trade with one another, feed ourselves, protect our people, and build systems that reflect our values, not imported agendas. Let those who wish to help Africa do so on African terms. Let those who come to invest do so with fairness, not fraud. Let those who speak of democracy stop installing dictators. Let those who bring aid stop stealing futures, because this time the eyes of Africa are open. This time we will not be deceived by diplomatic niceties while our people suffer in silence. The war against neocolonialism is not fought with bullets, but with books, with boldness, and with unity. It is fought when we raise our own standards, elect leaders with backbone, reject policies of dependence, and replace fear with faith in ourselves. It is fought every time an African country stands tall and says, "We will decide our own destiny." Across the vast lands of Africa, from the Sahel to the savannah, from the hills of Rwanda to the shores of Ghana, there is a rising force, a silent thunder growing louder with every passing day. It is not carried by the seasoned generals, nor the long, retired liberators. It is carried by the young people, the dreamers, the warriors of the 21st century, Africa's youth, whose time is no longer tomorrow, but now. They are no longer content with inherited excuses. They are no longer satisfied with borrowed slogans. They are rewriting the script, reclaiming their place in the journey toward a new Africa. For too long, the youth of Africa were told to wait. Wait your turn, wait for opportunity, wait for change, but they have realized that waiting has become a tool of control, that in the waiting room of African politics generations have passed, yet progress has limped. The youth now understand that Africa does not lack knowledge. It lacks the courage to let the young lead, and this realization is the seed of a revolution, not one of blood, but of thought, of spirit, of bold collective action. There is a hunger in the hearts of the African youth, not for material things, but for dignity, for relevance, for justice, and for purpose. They are asking the difficult questions: why are we rich in resources but poor in opportunity? Why do we speak of freedom yet kneel to outdated systems? Why do we celebrate Independence Days while our education systems, healthcare, and economies remain colonized in function if not in form? These are not the cries of rebels. These are the voices of a generation awakening to its power. This generation is not divided by tribe. It is not limited by language. It is united by pain, by promise, and by potential. And above all, it is inspired by the forgotten dream of Pan-Africanism, a dream not of abstract ideals, but of a united continent, driven by the belief that Africa must rise together or fall together. Pan-Africanism is no longer the dream of dusty books or fading conferences. It is now being spoken in the streets of Ouagadougou, in the minds of students in Nairobi, in the protests of Accra, and in the innovations of Lagos. It is no longer about unity for speeches. It is about unity for survival, for prosperity, for freedom. In the face of a world that thrives on Africa's division, the youth are daring to reconnect the broken pieces. They are building bridges through technology, uniting voices through art, sharing knowledge across borders, and breaking the barriers that politics failed to dismantle. They are saying, Africa will trade with Africa. Africa will learn from Africa. Africa will invest in Africa, and Africa will defend Africa, but let us not romanticize this moment. The youth face enormous obstacles, systems rigged against them, leaders who fear their energy, institutions that ignore their ideas. Yet the greatest threat to youth is not oppression, it is discouragement, that subtle poison that whispers it cannot be done. But let it be known, this generation is not the generation of silence. They are the generation of builders, of believers, of bold minds that cannot and will not be silenced. This is the generation that understands that Pan-Africanism is not an event. It is a lifestyle. It is a call to action. It is a rejection of imported identities and an embrace of African pride. It is the understanding that a threat to one African country is a threat to all, that the hope of one must inspire the strength of many, that no African country is truly free until all are free, and no African youth can thrive until the structures that suppress potential are dismantled continent-wide. So I say to this rising generation, do not be discouraged by the weight of history. Do not be silenced by the voices of fear. Do not be distracted by petty divisions, for your energy is your weapon. Your ideas are your power. Your unity is your shield, and your time is not approaching. It has arrived. Let your voices rise not in anger but in clarity. Let your actions speak not in violence but in vision, and let your legacy be one that reawakens the continent from its slumber. When Africa begins to rise, the world listens, not out of curiosity but out of necessity. For too long, the image of Africa has been distorted, filtered through lenses not designed by its own children. They painted us as the continent of war, of hunger, of helplessness. They wrote our stories in past tense. But what they failed to understand is that Africa is not a museum of misfortune. It is a powerhouse of potential, and now that potential has found its voice. A new Africa is speaking, not in whispers, not in apology, but with boldness, with confidence, and with clarity. This new voice does not beg for aid, it demands respect. It does not plead for space, it claims its rightful place at the table of global affairs. This Africa is no longer the Africa of dependency, it is the Africa of decisions. It is the Africa that understands that sovereignty is not only about flags and borders, but about economic independence, technological self-reliance, food security, cultural pride, and political courage. The world is witnessing a shift, because this new Africa is not only challenging the narratives of outsiders, it is rewriting its own story. And the pen is no longer in the hands of those who conquered, looted, and colonized. It is in the hands of those who build, who innovate, who educate, and who rise. From Dakar to Dar es Salaam, from Lusaka to Libreville, from Kinshasa to Kigali, this Africa is rising like a phoenix, not from ashes of defeat, but from the fire of renewal. It sends a message to the world that the days of exploitation are over. No longer shall our resources be extracted while our people remain in poverty. No longer shall our gold pave roads elsewhere while we walk barefoot at home. No longer shall our oil, diamonds, and uranium fund foreign empires, while our children study under trees and sleep on empty stomachs. This Africa is awake, and it is watching, it is calculating, it is organizing, and it is ready. The new Africa tells the world that partnerships must be equal, not dictated, that trade must be fair, not exploitative, that diplomacy must be mutual, not manipulative. We are not anti-West, nor are we blindly East. We are pro-Africa. We do not choose sides in global power struggles. We choose Africa. Our allegiance is not to ideology. It is to our future, to our youth, to our dignity. This voice of Africa is not hostile, but it is firm. It extends a hand of cooperation, not subjugation. It opens its borders to ideas, but guards its soul against cultural erosion. It celebrates diversity, but stands fiercely for sovereignty. It embraces global progress, but refuses to be used as a playground for superpower rivalries. The time has come when Africa must no longer be spoken for. It must speak for itself, act for itself, and chart its own destiny. And yes, there will be resistance. The empires that built their wealth on Africa's silence will not celebrate its voice. They will call it defiance. They will label it extremism. They will use their media to twist the truth and their institutions to create pressure. But truth needs no permission to exist, and freedom needs no apology to thrive. Africa must not fear the storms, for the storms are a sign that the ship has begun to move. We must not fear being misunderstood, for revolutions are always misunderstood at first. We must not fear standing alone, for often the path of principle is a lonely one. But let the world know that this Africa is not a threat. It is a promise to its people that never again will it bow in shame. A promise to its ancestors that their struggle was not in vain. A promise to its children that they will inherit a continent that is proud, powerful, and free. The global message must be clear. Africa is not rising because it seeks revenge. Africa is rising because it has remembered who it is. It is rising not to conquer others, but to conquer its fears, not to dominate, but to determine, not to destroy, but to define. And that definition begins not in conferences abroad, but in classrooms at home, in farms, in factories, in innovation hubs, in street movements, in honest leadership, and in a people who finally believe that their future is not a dream, it is their duty.